Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Dr. Leonard A. Zwelling. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, Conflict of Interest. Money Drives Medicine and People Die. Available for purchase through Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, all the regular online book resellers. But people, if you want to gather everything that Dr. Zwelling has in store, you got to go to his personal website. And that's lenzwelling.com. There, you're going to find more information on him and his impressive background. More information on this book, but get this, he has 2 other titles available for purchase that you're going to want to check out as well, all of which are available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, as well as lenzwelling.com. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out the fact that Dr. Zwelling was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best firms in the business, people you already know. We're talking about Author Reputation Press. So for my writers out there who have gone through their process and now you need help moving that masterpiece you just finished developing, contact ARP. People, they're one of the best in the business to do it. You got to head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help move your creative endeavors. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Dr. Zwelling here on the line. Now, the moment you start to do research on this book, you understand the discussion at hand. Now, before we go any further, I want to point out it's a fictional narrative, but it is based upon true events. And you see the doctor there in his title. This is coming from his experience. Obviously, things have been altered and changed to protect identities, also to help from an entertainment standpoint, right? Certain aspects would be embellished, but this is all loosely based upon true events, and people, you're not going to be able to put this book down. It is all about how the medical field, unfortunately so, has changed. It has been altered, and if you are someone that is engulfed in that world, you understand how money has infiltrated and has altered the care that patients are receiving. That is a loaded statement. There are a lot of layers and a lot of nuances to it. And at the end of the day, Dr. Zwelling is going to be able to clarify all of it for us. Sit back and strap in. Dr. Zwelling, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
We are thoroughly looking forward to this. I think this is going to be something that is all too familiar, unfortunately. The range of care that patients receive based upon the insurance that they have, based upon the money that is in their bank account. It's very unfortunate to talk about the dark side, but I do believe the only way we can fix or alleviate the pressures that so many are feeling is by conversations like this and by books like this that you have written. So let's jump right in. Before we go into the words on those pages, Dr. Zwelling, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
I am a board-certified internist and medical oncologist who went into basic research first and then went to business school and became an administrator and eventually vice president for research administration at the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas. I retired in 2013, and I don't think I would have finished any of the books if I hadn't retired, because writing a book is a full-time job. And I wasn't able to fit it in when I was trying to be a vice president.
Yeah. Well, listen, that is definitely something I've heard a couple of times before in the past. I mean, it is quite the endeavor that people take on when it comes to writing the book. So congratulations on completing such a feat. Hopefully many more books on the horizon. Let's jump into your book, Conflict of Interest. Listen, I want to go a little bit more into the storyline itself, but I think it's more important to talk about the precipice. Why did you even embark upon this journey and write this book?
I think it had to do with my own encounters with various issues surrounding conflict of interest, which is when essentially someone has a specific interest in either research or patient care, but then also has an interest in money. So in some way, the outcome of the patient care or the outcome of the research can be influenced by money. And it always seemed to me during my training that we worked really, really hard to make sure that didn't happen. And what I was seeing in front of me was that was not going on any further, that people were actually, well, embracing conflict of interest, and it was got to the point where it was no longer thought to be wrong. And that gave rise to conflict of interest committees and ways to oversee medical research and patient care to try to eliminate or manage conflict of interest. And despite all that infrastructure that was built to try to prevent it, it was going on anyway. And that's the story that I wanted to tell.
Well, can we go into tying now to the narrative itself? Can you go into an example that is discussed with regards to the patient care that one is receiving, juxtaposed against the money that is being put forth?
Well, basically, the president of my hospital, which is called Houston Masada Hospital, the president of the hospital had invented a drug. So the obvious thing to do to test the efficacy and safety of that drug would be to do it elsewhere, not at his hospital, where all the people doing the testing report to him. But that's not what happens. What happens is the trial is actually done at Houston Masada Hospital, and therefore the results of that trial are highly questioned because of the conflict between the president of the institution, who not only invented the drug and owns the patent, he's also on the board of directors of the company making the drug and has a huge stock position with that. So if the trial goes well, he's in a position to make millions of dollars.
Something that I think is all too familiar with the medical field, and also I think just surrounding a number of fields here in the United States. I know on the pre-screening call, I had quickly mentioned, money being infiltrated into politics. And we've seen just the disaster in terms of that and how compromising certain politicians can become to, basically sell their power for money, right? For acquisition in that way. Well, you're talking about the president of this particular hospital, who also does a similar thing based upon this medicine and the stocks that he has invested with it. Well, connecting, and of course, all within the realm of protecting yourself and people's particular identity. But can you talk about a real life experience that you had maybe encountered that was potentially similar to that?
Well, that's exactly one that I encountered, and it actually made it into the press at the back, now 15, 20 years ago. It was a while ago when this all occurred, but it actually did happen, and it happened also with other members of the faculty who had stock positions with companies whose drug they were testing. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that when I began my administrative career, I would say 20 to 25% of the clinical trials at MD Anderson were funded by the drug companies. When I stopped, it was up to 75%. The major drivers of clinical research in this country is the pharmaceutical industry, basically because they're the only ones with enough money and with the molecule that people want to test. It used to be that those molecules almost always emanated from an academic medical center. Now the drug companies have developed large laboratories, are developing these drugs on their own. Then they are funding the trials. It's incredibly important for the faculty who do these trials to stay out of the stock of the drug companies who are sponsoring their trials. Yeah. And that sometimes proves difficult.
People, again, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's lenzwelling.com. The book is called Conflict of Interest. Money drives medicine and people die. You need to pick it up. This is something that is compelling to no end. And not only is it an entertaining read, but it also is something that is very informative, right? Fiction or not, we understand shades of this are actually happening. And once you start to gain that exposure, conversations can ensue. And through those conversations, we can hopefully, and this is the optimist in me, hopefully implement some real life changes. Dr. Zwelling, my next question that I want to go into is those real life changes, right? Something you've already started to go into in your previous answer, but in light of your narrative, what changes would you personally advocate for to ensure that financial considerations don't overshadow the primary goal of patient care?
Okay, so let me give you an example. After I retired from MD Anderson, I went to work in a clinic, a local clinic. And at one point, a drug company wanted to bring in a specific drug for hepatitis C. Mm-hmm. And it was a good drug, but the company wanted to bring in lunch and bring in brochures and bring in other things to give to our doctors. And I said to the company, you are welcome to come in and make a presentation. No food, no pens, no pads, nothing else. So you have to put a firm line in the sand. Nothing can come from the drug company to the doctors. And the biggest one, believe it or not, is free food. They sponsor dinners, they sponsor lunches, and at those dinners and lunches, they give a spiel to the doctors about why they should use their drug. Mm-hmm. And when it's been studied, it's been shown that even something as small as a meal can change the mind of a physician and his prescribing habits.
Mm. So
the easiest thing to do is you just put a wall between the drug company and the docs.
So I want to go further into that. I think it's fair to assume, right, when you're talking about just giving perks, right, and how that could influence. But talk to us a little bit more about why that's important to cut that out, Dr. Zwelling.
I think it's important to cut that out because you want the doctors to make the best decisions they can, independent of any outside influence. Mm-hmm. What's best for the patient. When a patient can be treated adequately with a very inexpensive drug, a common generic drug, why give them the expensive new drug that the pharmaceutical company is pushing? Yet that's exactly what the pharmaceutical company is doing. So this is really dollar issues. This is not something that's hypothetical. This is real. And that's why the drug companies have all those detail people going to doctor's office, giving them free samples. The free samples are given to the patients. The patients use the free samples for a week. They like the drug, and on we go. And now the pharmaceutical company has reached into the doctor's practice and altered his prescribing habits.
Mm-hmm. As we start to close out of here, Dr. Zwelling, I do want to give you a couple of minutes to talk about one of your other narratives here and quickly plug it. What are you hoping your readers take from your book upon conclusion?
I want people to ask their doctors really important and good questions. The one thing that I have as an advantage for most other patients, because I'm 76 now, and unfortunately doctors are a big part of my life, mm-hmm. is that I know what to ask only because I've been in the system. Most lay people don't know what to ask, don't ask the questions they need to ask as to why something is being done, or why they are getting a drug, or why they are being offered a clinical trial, and they need to ask those questions. Yeah. Even though the government theoretically has a system in place when it comes to clinical research where they must give informed consent, how informed is that consent when you get a 30-page form to fill out before you start the clinical trial? My argument is that it's not really informed consent. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of this book, too, when doctors do things that are experimental without getting adequate informed consent.
People, like I mentioned, in addition to Conflict of Interest, there are two other books that Dr. Zwelling has written. One is called Congressional Malpractice, the other, Red Kool-Aid, Blue Kool-Aid. Well, listen, dealer's choice here, Dr. Zwelling, because you know your books better than anyone else. Choose another one of your titles. Give us a brief synopsis as to what to expect.
So after I finished at MD Anderson, I was a Robert Wood Johnson Health Policy Fellow, which necessitates living in Washington, D.C., and serving on the staff of a congressional committee.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the Committee for Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions of the United States Senate for a year during the discussion of Obamacare. So I saw how the sausage was actually made. I took notes all day and wrote all night, and that's congressional malpractice. It was the story of Obamacare from behind the scenes and what really happened and made that law what it is today.
It's called Conflict of Interest. You're going to want to pick up copies through Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Check out his personal website, lenzwelling.com, to stay up to date with everything that he has in store. I promise you, you will not be let down. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and just get informed, get lost in it, and see what we can do to change these astronomical costs that we are all dealing with and where the root of it all comes from. Dr. Zwelling, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
That was exactly what I hoped it would be. Thanks very much, Mr. Cole. Appreciate it.